How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the VMware vSphere 5.5 Data Center Virtualization's Fundamentals course. My name's Rob, and I will be guiding you through the fundamental understanding of how data center virtualization, specifically with VMware vSphere, works. Now, I know this probably comes as a shock to a lot of people, and if it does, well, it's kind of the way that the world goes around. Most of what I've done on my YouTube channel has been specifically Cisco, and a lot of that is great, but in the real world, you can't just focus on one technology unless you're at the advanced level with it on the high-end CCIE level, and you work for a large company that needs somebody that just focuses on Cisco, and you've got a lot more experience than I do. Currently, I hold the CCNA, the CCNP, the CCNA Security, and I just recently took and passed the VMware Certified Associate exam, 5.5 version, and what that allowed me to do was segue myself to the VCP level. So I'm actually studying for my VCP currently. And the premise behind this series was to take what I've learned about VMware fundamentally and virtualization fundamentally and pass that off to you guys, and then build up to a level to where I'm teaching the course from a fundamental perspective, so you guys understand how the different components of VMware vSphere works. And then beyond that, we're going to take a look at getting some of the more advanced topics under our belts. We'll talk about them in this course, and then we'll expand upon them when we get into the VCP level. So we'll look at installing vSphere, vCenter, the different things that are needed to get vSphere and vCenter up and running, and then doing all of the things that go into running VMware on your servers and managing hosts and guests on those hosts. So at the end of the day, or actually I should say at the end of the series, which shouldn't be too long because considering it's all fundamentals, you should have a basic understanding of the components, the theory, and the reason behind data center virtualization. And you might be wondering why I decided to fire up VMware instead of like Hyper-V or Citrix. Well, simply for the fact that I have not been able to successfully get Hyper-V to work in a virtual machine. So rather than poking around and trying to get something to work and not wanting to deal with it, it was easier for me just to run with VMware. There's free copies of things out there, and I will be more than happy to take you out online and show you where you can download the stuff so you can follow along with me when we get into more of the conceptual understanding. One thing that I will do in one of the videos in this series is I will actually demonstrate how to install VMware vSphere 5.5, it's the free version of it, inside of VMware Workstation 9, and I'll demo that. I've actually already got the video recorded, it's just a matter of incorporating it in with the upload. So what I'll do is I'll incorporate that so that you guys can see how it works, and then I will be doing several I'll bring up vSphere and I will show you what different things relate to what. And we're not going to go very in depth on the hands-on part of it. Like I said, it's going to be 99% theory. I'll just give you an idea of, well, if you wanted to do this is how you would do it. So that's the primary premise behind this series and what we're going to cover. So out of the gate, we're going to look at what is and how does VMware vSphere work. We'll look at the components of it, and the majority of them are going to be in vCenter, and we'll explain what vCenter is and how it works. When you get into the meat and potatoes of VMware, you will quickly find out, and I'll draw this out as I'm going along as well, so you guys have an understanding of why I'm going the way that I'm going with this. You'll understand once I draw it out how each piece relates, and then how it's similar in some fashions to the way Cisco breaks down their switching topology, their hierarchical network diagrams, with you having the core, the distribution, and the access layer switches. Well, VMware kind of laid out the same same model, if you will, with the way that they have integrated different feature sets inside of vSphere and vCenter and things of that nature. So we'll take a look at those as well, so that you guys can have an understanding of how it works. Because, in my opinion, it's easier to relate something that makes sense to you already to something that doesn't make sense to you. So it'll be easier for me to kind of put two and two together and understand from taking each piece of the puzzle. So like installing Esxi on a server, and then giving that server an IP address, and then being able to use a web browser to go out to that server IP address, download the vSphere client to your computer so you can manage that server from your desktop. Much in the same fact of you taking a new router, consoling into it, giving it an IP address and VTY access, and then putting it into a rack in your data center, and then going back to your desk and then configuring it from the comfort of your cube or your office or whatever the case may be. So we'll put a lot of two and two together as we're going through here. Like I said, there's not going to be a lot of hands-on, but we'll look at it from a higher level understanding. And I'll start putting pieces together just so you understand the architecture. Because if you understand how the pieces flow together, then understanding the overall scope of it and the design and the implementation will be that much easier. And how you're having a host and you manage that host with the vSphere client, and that every computer that you install on that host is a guest, and that every guest has a certain amount of memory, CPU, and hard drive space allocated to it from the data stores or the network attached storage or your SAN environment that you might have on site. And taking all these pieces, putting them together, and how you can use vSphere to manage that, and how you can manage all of your vSphere clients, which is going to be a physical host on the network. How you can use vCenter to manage all of your hosts, and then taking that a step back, and how if you can have multiple vCenter servers, and then how you can take that back another step, and how you can orchestrate things with different features like site recovery manager, orchestration, or configuration manager, things like that. We'll take it from a high level, we'll drill down a little bit, we'll take a step back, and as we introduce new features and services into the series, I'll take a dive into it. As something else comes in, I'll take a step back, talk about it, dive back in, and as eventually you'll start to just add another piece to the pie, and eventually you'll have a full pie, and you'll be able to deliver that to your customer, because ultimately that's what we're going to be doing. So whether you're a consultant, a systems administrator, or a network engineer like I am, it doesn't really make a difference. In my current day-to-day job, I'm a network engineer / admin. So part of my day is monitoring users on the network, making sure that if, say for instance, Microsoft's SCCM blows up and their forefront says, hey man, this particular computer has a virus on it, and I find out that they're sending out, say, 600 TCP connections every 10 minutes, and it's chewing up network bandwidth, I have to go in there and figure out why, whether it's swapping out a hard drive with another computer and re-imaging it, or whatever the case might be. The other part of my day is logging into vCenter and monitoring hosts and things like that, making sure that DRS and vMotion are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and talking about how that works. And then the other part of my day is, since I'm a CCNP, my boss likes the fact that I know Cisco and that I can look at different things like how's utilization looking, how is Wi-Fi looking, because the office section that I work in has I work at the corporate headquarters of a pretty big company, and the company has an entire customer service, technical services, and just normal, they have their HR department, things like that. The normal office departments you'd see inside of an office building, and then there's also a 600,000 square foot plant that is behind all of that, where all the manufacturing takes place. So we have wireless running throughout the entire network, and then some other features that come into play, and making sure that the warehouse management servers are up and running, and that the plant users can get out to those. All that comes back to VMware. All that is virtualized. We have Citrix servers that are running on virtual machines, and then we have to be able to give a thin client, like a Wise thin client, which is just basically if you take a trying to think. If you take a like a Linksys router, they're almost the same size, and I'll show you a picture of what one looks like. We give it wireless connectivity, and then we give a we set up a terminal session back to the Citrix server, and then that's how everybody's able to use their Citrix environment. So that's just one way. But we've integrated a lot of virtualization into the mix, so we were able to do VDI with virtual desktop infrastructure with Citrix, which the Citrix servers are sitting on top of VMware, which are sitting on top of Cisco UCS Blade servers, which are running behind the scenes, are running on the MDS platform, which behind that is running on Cisco 3750 switches with 10 gig uplinks. So the beautiful thing about all this architecture that's come into play is, one, I'm a Cisco guy, I'm also a VMware guy. So I'm able to do both sides of the house, plus I know Microsoft. So I'm able to take all of my understanding of pretty much every aspect of network administration, systems administration, and then basically taking everything that I've learned about Cisco, VMware, and Microsoft and utilizing it every day. So, and we'll see how this kind of builds into it. You'll have your networking section, you'll have your server administration, and you'll have your systems administration. So, but that's kind of the high level overview. So I'll take what I've learned on my day-to-day job and I'll throw bits and pieces into the series as I'm going through, and we'll go from there. So we'll go through an intro to data center virtualization in VMware vSphere. We'll look at the components of VMware vSphere, and then in Module 3 we'll see what it is we have to put all together, how each piece works. It's all theory, so I'm not going to really go into a whole lot of detail. However, what I will do is over here, I've got actually vSphere pulled up. I was actually installing another server on my vSphere client. So I'm going to bring this over here. And as you can see, I just finished installing another server. Now the naming convention will vary depending on what you're doing. I'm running this in evaluation mode, as you can see right down here. And all I have to do is click in here and click OK. And I'm going to give it a password and do this twice real quick, and we'll do that, and then I'll be on that. Password has been changed, so it'll allow me to log in. Now what I'll do is I'll install VMware tools, and I'll show you what this it allows the server and the virtualization to work much more cleanly, and because right now it's real spotty. Now I'm not running this like in VMware Workstation. So it's not VMware Workstation with Esxi installed on top of it. This is a physical server that I have right next to me. Tapping on it right there, and I have Esxi loaded to it. So what I'll do is I'll actually Control Alt to break out of that, and then what I'll do is I'll right click on this guy, go down to the guest, and click on Install Upgrade VMware Tools. Click OK. What that does is it will open up and install the VMware tools inside of the CD drive, and then I will double click on that, and momentarily VMware tools will get installed, and this will, once it's installed, it'll reboot the computer, which will make the where I got this running here. There we go. So sometimes you have to play with it a couple times. So we'll go on next, typical, and then install. It takes off from there. It only takes a couple of minutes. The reason it's only taking a couple of minutes here is because of the fact that I think I gave the server like 6 gigs of RAM and like 50 gigs on the hard drive, so it moves pretty quick. And it's I got a four cores of a CPU, so it moves pretty quick. But as soon as it's finished installing, I don't know if you can tell this or not, but you can tell that it's the mouse isn't, at least I can tell. Click on finish, you restart, and then as soon as I get this computer back up and running, I will add it to a domain which this guy is attached to, and then I'll eventually load this Windows 7 computer to that same domain. So I wanted to show you a little bit about that, and I'm actually consoled into it. So this would be the exact same thing as you physically being in front of the computer. It's got the exact same And see how it's a little cleaner now. It doesn't look like it's it doesn't look laggy at all. There's no latency in the connection. So we'll click on here. From here, Control Alt Insert. I'll bring that up, and then I'll log into it locally, and then that's that. Now it'll load up, and these typically load pretty quick because of the fact of it's virtual. I mean, it's as fast as the computer it's sitting on will work, and we're installed. So now we have the initial configuration window pop up. We're gonna squeeze this out just a little bit here so we don't have to do as much scrolling. We're gonna click on this guy. What'll automatically happen is Server Manager will pop up, which is fine. And I'm gonna scroll down here. I'm actually gonna click on Start, and I'm going to click on Administrative Tools. Alright, no, I'm sorry, Computer. I'm gonna go to Properties, and this is where you would go in and add it to a domain. So we're going to change this. We're going to add to domain. We're going to go Riker.com. And hopefully, if everything's working the way it's supposed to be, and actually, let me click on this, and this should console me into my domain controller. This is the domain controller right here. This computer and this computer right here are going to be added to it because you can't install VMware vCenter on a domain controller. So, but anyway, I'm going to move this off to the side and get into the meat and potatoes in the next video of how this works. So, when we get into it, we'll get into a little bit more understanding of how things work, and I'll explain how to install this. And once you see the video or see the installing Esxi in VMware Workstation, the same process I use for that is exactly what you're going to use in physical equipment. So I'm going to scroll that off to the other side of my other monitor here, and I will get into what is data center virtualization in the next video, and we'll talk about, or I'm sorry, in the third video, because the next one you'll see is going to be installing it, just so you guys can see how that works, and if you care to understand it. Now, you can install Esxi in VMware Player. I've done that as well. However, the problem with that is if you install it there, you run the risk of you won't be hit. Well, it's not really a big risk, because what will end up happening is if you load it to VMware Player, you're going to get the same GUI here, and you're going to be able to add computers to it. The problem is whatever amount of memory you give to the VMware or the VM in Player, you're kind of stuck with as long as it's turned on. So I prefer not to use Player because you can only run one instance of something at a time, where with Workstation you can have multiple instances running. It's like Esxi but for the desktop. So, but anyway, in the next video I'm going to show you guys how to install that, and then in the third video we'll get into how VMware really works from the backside, or not the backside, but from a theoretical understanding. So I hope this has been informative for you. I want to thank you for viewing.